Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Monday, June 22nd, and the time now is 1:31. Notice for this budget hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Monday, June 15th, and second notice was on Thursday, June 18th. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 282-35 LS, the Fiscal Year 2021 Appropriation Act, as requested by the governor, relative to the Department of Agriculture's Fiscal Year 2021 budget request. Joining me today, I'd like to recognize my colleagues, the Oversight Chair on the Department of Agriculture, Senator Clinton Rijal. We have Senator Kelly Mars Taitano and Senator Jim Moylan. General rules for the budget hearing. Those testifying on behalf of the department will be recognized by myself, by the chair, and invited to the panel. They've been invited. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimonies may be read, and then the testimony should be summarized. Testimony shall be confined to the substance. We're talking about the budget of Department of Agriculture and nothing else. Individuals will be allowed to present oral testimony, and when you're done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave or be escorted or removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and title for the record. At this time, I ask the panel members from the Department of Agriculture to rise and for our sergeant at arms to please swear them in. Thank you, Sergeant Arm. We will now begin to hear testimony from the Department of Agriculture. Ma'am?
Half a day. Is this on? Can you hear me? Is this on? Sorry. Okay. Oh, there you go. Half a day. Good morning, Chair, honorable senators. My name is Chelsea Munya-Brecht, the Director of the Department of Agriculture. And to my left is our Administrative Services Officer, Antonia Santos. We are here today, as you mentioned, to discuss with you our budget appropriation for the coming fiscal year. I do want to say it has always been a relief for us that we have found much support from our senators and for those of you who share our passion, interest, and commitment to the natural resources for our island. We understand that our government will be facing some leaner times with the coming fiscal year, but we do, I guess, come before you ready to answer any questions you may have with regard to our budget. Most of our divisions are completely locally funded, but do avail of several federal grants to help support our operations. And we have technically 6 different sections that support our island and its natural resources. We have our Agriculture Development Services, our Forestry Division, our Biosecurity Division, our Division of Aquatic and Wildlife Resources, our Animal Control and Animal Health Division, as well as our Law Enforcement section, which enforces our local and federal mandates for natural resource protections. At this time, we're, I guess, ready for any questions that you may have. It's difficult to know exactly which mindset will be coming from the legislature just because of the current situation with our local budget and the trying times of the coronavirus.
All right, not a problem. How much COVID-19 federal assistance will you be receiving in FY 2020? if any?
We have $1 million that we are helping to disperse to our local fishing community.
No, is that COVID money? Is that is that part of the CARES
Yes,
funding?
it's part of the CARES Act, but it's
Okay.
funneled through the Department of Commerce and then through NOAA and then to the Pacific Fisheries Commission. What we have done as the department is taken the initiative to begin the development of our disbursement plan, which actually we just had a teleconference with the Pacific Fisheries Commission last week, and we are far ahead of many states and other territories already because we initiated the process with registering all our local fishers, both commercial and sustenance. So that helped us to determine exactly how many individuals we will generally be dealing with, so that we can help devise a plan to dispense money to them in a way that is fair and considerate of all.
All right.
Other than that, we have, we're one of the first agencies I was made aware yesterday to start our reimbursement process with FEMA for some of the COVID supplies that we had to purchase in order to reopen the department and for reimbursement for some of our personnel's overtime. And then out of the governor's allotment from the CARES Act, we had only submitted enough for reimbursement for some of our COVID supplies. But other than that, the department did not directly see or receive any CARES Act funding. Even the funding that was made available to farmers was disseminated through the USDA, so not the local agency.
All right. All right. So generally speaking, the CARES funding that the governor received, you're not getting generally a lot, or if anything, you're only getting whatever you needed to replenish what you had to use for COVID. It's all COVID driven, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in FY 2020, this fiscal year, the current budget shows 14 funded vacant positions. And in FY 2021, you wanted 15. So in other words, you got 15, you got 14 today. And what is your plan in filling those 14? Because you got in FY 2021, it's going to be 15. Is that 15 more, or you're actually just adding one more on top of that 14?
Well, we've worked to start filling we've already initiated the process to fill and continuously start to fill some of the vacant positions that we were given. What we did see in the next budget is that some of those positions may have been unfunded, and let's see. Do you know how many we exactly requested for the fiscal 21?
On this one?
Yes.
Actually, just the animal control.
Okay.
And to one of the forestry.
Okay. So some of the additional positions were for animal control officers.
Okay,
which-
Chelsea, stop first.
Yes.
Chelsea, your current FY 2020 identified 14 vacant positions. Where are you at today with those 14 vacant positions? It equates to 678,176. How many have you filled? Or you're attempting to fill? All 14?
I think we should ask for 14.
Nobody's asking for the current fiscal year. How many have we already filled or attempting to fill?
Most of them, director, are limited term. It's only the secretary is classified.
I know, but there's also the secretary, the agriculturalist, that were vacant positions.
And that's only two then.
Okay. And what others have we filled?
Well, we anticipate that this year.
Did you fill any of the 14? Let's start with that.
Yes, we did. We
You
filled
did?
two
Okay.
conservation officers. We filled a secretary position. We attempted to fill a forester position, but that was declined by the interviewees. We're still in the process of recruiting for an animal control officer, in the process of recruiting for the secretary position. We filled the administrative services officer for DAR, which is 50% locally funded.
Okay, Chelsea, I'm going to ask the question one more time. In FY 2020, The current budget showed 14 funded vacant positions. How many positions have you filled with the 14? Keep it simple. Don't be
Sorry.
Don't make it hard because the whatever you get 50% for federal, that doesn't count on this package.
Okay.
You got 14 positions. I know you need conservation officers, you need secretaries. What have you filled so far this year?
Let's see.
3, 4?
3.
3, thank you. And how do you plan on filling the others? The other 11?
We're in the process of recruiting for several of the positions right now.
Okay. Okay, and you do realize that on your FY 2021, it showed 15 funded vacant position.
Yes.
Is that inclusive of the 14? So in other words, just one more on top of the 14, or you're asking for 15 new ones?
I believe we asked for
They took out existing.
3 more than, so we asked for 18 positions, but 3 of them were removed. So we had asked for an additional 4 positions.
Okay, if you look at your budget, the comparison of 2020 and 2021 is only 144,000. Okay? How many positions does that equate to? I'm looking at your budget, and you have 95,000 is going to go to the director's office, 2,000 Aquaculture Development Service, 7,000 to Animal Health Control, 27,000 to Forestry and Soil, and then Animal Control further down, Special Fund is 158. And as I go down the numbers, the difference between the comparison between 2020 and 2021. I just need you to explain the reason. I'm only asking you these questions because we want to know where you're going. Because based on your budget request, there's only 144,000 difference between 2020 and 2021. And I know you need help. I know the Department of Agriculture needs help in conservation officer, in equipment, in a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
I need you to be able to sell that to us. If you have, there's 9 senators here. They're more than likely to be voting on the budget. I need you to sell us why you need that additional 144. Please think about that as I move along with the questions, okay?
Okay.
Office supplies, okay, you got equipment. In FY 2020, the department budget was 45,000. And then the question is,
Where's that?
why is the department requesting additional 3 computers in FY 2021? Are the computers desktop or laptops with printers and can use the copy machine as printer?
Okay. Well, most of our divisions have extremely outdated computers. Our Animal Control Division and our Agriculture Development Services Division are actually functioning on computers that are virtually broken down or breaking down every day. And if those computers actually were to crash, there would be absolutely 0 replacements for any of them.
So you're looking at upgrading, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to recognize my colleagues that have joined us today. I'll start with the Speaker, Tina Munoz-Barnes. And we also have Oversight Chair of Department of Agriculture, Senator Clint Rogell. Let me see who's here. We have Senator Sabina Perez, Senator Jim Moylan, Senator Kelly Mars Taitano, Senator Mary Torres Camacho, or Camacho Torres, Senator Luis Muña, and we have Senator Telo Taidewe. I will now ask the Oversight Chair first to begin if he has any questions, and then it will be followed by the Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning, Senator Rogell.
So, just a few questions. One of the things, there's the 15% reserve on the general fund appropriations. How does that affect, or does it have any effect on your FY20 appropriations?
Can you answer that one? I'm sorry. He's asking if there's a 15% of general fund appropriations in reserve. How does that affect our appropriations and
For
operations?
2020?
Yes.
We don't have a 15%. Oh, 250 and 450. Senator, are you referring to the current budget? The 15% reserve?
Yeah, is there any effect on the
Okay.
FY20 appropriations? from
Okay,
that?
the only.
Ma'am, if you can please identify who you are and your position, please.
You have to just state your name.
I'm sorry?
Just state your name.
Yeah. My name is Antonia Santos. I'm the Administrative Services Officer. Well, the only area, if you're referring to the 250 and 450, it's only for general fund that there's a 15% reserve. The only area that we have general fund operation is the conservation officer. And they don't have 450, they do have 250.
Okay. Any anticipated shortfall for FY20?
Anticipated shortfall. We do
This
have
fiscal
a
year.
lot of fund, what do you call this, retirees though?
But you're not counting the retirees. Without the retirees,
Okay.
you have anticipated shortfalls.
Yes, Senator, we do anticipate shortfall.
Can you tell us which funding source and how much you think and what might it be affected?
It's half our animal control division.
Well, for 2020?
Yeah.
No, we're okay for now. It's the general fund.
Okay, so which ones?
Yeah, that would be the animal control.
We're thinking the shortfall will be anticipated in our animal control section
The general fund.
with the general fund appropriation.
Okay. Do you have an idea of the amount?
We're talking about, how about $90,000?
Okay, thank you. Also, in reviewing the budget digest summary page, the authorized appropriations for FY20 shows $4,226,251, but the appropriation in the public law or the FY20 Budget Act was $4,076,251. Can you explain, there's about a variance of $150,000 between the Budget Digest summary and the FY20 Budget Act?
Yes, we serve as a pass-through appropriation for the animal shelter, so the $150,000 goes directly to them. So it's not actually part of our operations.
I see. So that's actually for the animal shelter. Is this for gain?
Yes,
So this is 150,000 passed through for gain.
yes,
Okay. So it's actually not a part of the budget.
no.
All right. Again, I want to sort of ask a similar question, well, basically the same question that the budget chair asked, is if you could just tell us about the $144,628. That's basically the increase in your budget request this year as compared to the current fiscal year. I'm sorry, your current budget request as compared to the current fiscal year. So could you just give us a little explanation of what kind of things that increase would fund?
Well, that increase would likely fund some of the positions that we're trying to fill. We have hired two additional conservation officers this year and would like to still fill that section as it's needed. With our agricultural development services, which is 100% general fund funded, we have, again, Mr. John Borja, who's the division chief, and two additional positions that assist with, one is specifically set aside to review and inspect for permits for clearing and grading, and another one helps with operating the tissue culture lab. But other than those three positions, that section has no personnel to complete a lot of the agriculture and aquaculture projects that we're in the process of developing. If I could just take a minute to tell you about some of the projects that we're working on so that you could see where we're trying to go with or what direction we're trying to head into with the funding request.
Yes, please. Yes.
Right now, we've been working with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to identify, and we've already identified 20 agricultural lessees who will then be put through a training and workforce development workshops that we're creating to teach them about farming practices and techniques that will be beneficial both to them economically and then to the island's natural resources. Because that's been a challenge with the CLTC, is that some of the lessees who obtain land don't actually know how to farm, or they're in places where it makes it not just an easy rollout for the farming process. And additionally, we're trying to shift some of the mindset of the concepts of farming so that we can move away from the need for fertilizers and pesticides, but rather engage in natural processes. So we're working to develop workshops and follow through for these 20 lessees. We're working with a local nonprofit agency to disseminate seed and soil packets to over 150 to 300 CLTC residential lessees. We're also working with another nonprofit to create garden buckets that already have plants in them, and we're working with them to distribute these to senior citizens and those with disabilities who can't readily go out and start planting in their properties. We're working with GITA to try and develop the aquaculture economy again on Guam and have the aquaculture ponds at agriculture inspected and refurbished as necessary, and then provided the additional equipment so that we could actually be the cultivation site for fish fry, which we can then distribute to local farmers. Right now we don't have that, and that was what was the challenge when we had the aquaculture systems in the 70s, is that they didn't have any access to readily available fry, and that in a sense is what kind of just removed that aquaculture economy from the island. So we wanted to service that, which would be what the department should service as. And we're also working to register farmers with GSA, so should they choose to be vendors for our local government or for any of the schools, they would have that ability to do that. And that's been a challenge for farmers, is some of the paperwork that they have to navigate through. And that's just to start what we are working on trying to accomplish in the ADS division. So you can imagine the challenges that we face when there's really one guy to do it. Additionally, ADS serves at the entry point for our department for
And
permits.
I'm sorry, ADS, that's Agriculture Development
Yes.
Services?
So every person who comes in for a clearing and grading permit or a position paper on federally funded projects has to start with our ADS division. We have one person who actively inspects for clearing and grading permits and those position papers, and then our division chief tries to divide that among his time as well. Agriculture used to receive 10 permits a month. We get upwards of nearly 20 a day now. And so we constantly field calls from frustrated residents, businesses, other agencies, trying to find out where their permits are. And we really have no recourse for them except to say we're trying to get to it. And that's really where we're at, because we have, like I said, and the one person who does the inspections is currently detailed right now to Homeland Security as our RAC, because that's been the position that he's filled for years. So he already has the training and the knowledge to work as the RAC person for Homeland Security during the COVID crisis. So when you ask what we want to do with that 140,000, it's just to get us to a place where we can be suitably functional for the island.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I have at this time. I just want you to know that I really do support agriculture, and I think this is something we need to start looking towards. I'll do my best to help find ways to support your agency in fulfilling your mission and expanding what you guys are doing. There's a lot of talk about the economy and what do we do when we rely on things like tourism and the military, both of which are difficult to control, and a lot of things are out of our control with regards to those two industries. So I've been a huge proponent, and I will continue to be a huge proponent of developing an agriculture industry on Guam that I believe can be a third pillar for the island's economy, and something that will keep money on island and create new businesses and new job opportunities and new revenues for the island. So with that, I encourage you to continue what you've been working on as far as expanding the Agriculture Development Services division and promoting expansion of agriculture on Guam and developing an agricultural industry on Guam. I really think that's where we need to start looking towards. And I think it's also important in light of things like pandemic. Because of the pandemic, there were reports from major food manufacturers and the food producers in the U.S., particularly Tyson Foods, the CEO, is quoted in several news organizations saying because they had to shut down meat processing plants because of people testing positive for COVID-19 in those plants, the CEO of Tyson Foods said, get ready for a meat shortage. There's been other issues where other food producers are struggling to produce food because they're having people test positive and they're having to shut down facilities and shut down plants. So it kind of highlights the vulnerability of Guam and Guam's food security, which is another issue that I don't think we pay enough attention to when we're thinking about agriculture and about food production. We import 90% of our food. Should anything happen worldwide, like a pandemic that could affect supply lines, we're very vulnerable. So I think it's something we really need to begin to pivot towards and begin to focus on. How do we develop our food security? How do we grow and produce our own food here on Guam, not only for economic reasons, but for food security reasons? So
Absolutely, Senator, and even along those lines, with the training and workforce development that we're trying to accomplish with the agricultural lessees that we identified, we wanted to also incorporate a component for meat processing and meat raising so that they can either choose to raise chickens. Some of the legislation that we've discussed with you is to delist or remove the fact that taking deer from the wild and then raising it at home is illegal, so that we could sort of encourage that livestock cultivation with an already existing population on the island that is actually technically an invasive species. And the military buildup and the pandemic have already had impacts on our operations and our budget. As I said, with the number of permits that now come in, they completely tax an already undermanned section. And the fact that the pandemic has all but, I guess, close to eliminated the revenues that we would generate from the Tourism Attraction Fund, that's going to cripple another section of ours, which is the Animal Control section, that currently has, I believe it's 4 positions funded through that. So now we're stuck with figuring out how are we going to account for that loss with the Animal Control section. And as a department, we have taken steps to try to generate our own revenue. With Animal Control, we worked to introduce the legislation to increase the pet registration fee to what we think is a reasonable and fair amount, given that it hasn't increased since the inception of the law. And $5 to register a pet, we asked for the increase to $20, and part of that would go to funding our own animal control section to be less reliant on, number one, the general fund and the tourism attraction fund. As I said with the permit inspections, we don't just inspect for clearing and grading. We also have to inspect for endangered species, listed species, and these are from birds, fruit bats, to different trees that are federally and locally listed for our island, the cocoa bird, the rail, everything. So it doesn't just take 1 man-hour per permit. It takes, right now, no less than 2 personnel to spend at least 3 to 4 hours per permit, not including the time to write it up. So and the department collects 0 fees on that right now. We crafted a proposal for how we would charge, and we considered everything from the fact that you're going to have a single family resident trying to build a single family home and what that would cost versus development to build and what that would cost, and it's multiple acres. So anywhere from less than a half acre to multiple acres. And we think we put together a very fair and modest proposal for that. And we've been working with BSP and Sea Grant to create our section for the Guam permit guidebook and to incorporate those fees. So pending that, I mean, at least we'll be able to start seeing some compensation for the time that we put into each permit inspection. So we're not just sitting idly by and trying to ask for more money. We're trying to do what we can to, do for ourselves and to do it fairly.
You guys have also increased some of the collections from things like the invasive species, correct?
We're working on that. The invasive species fund was when it was introduced, was anticipated to generate over $2 million a year. I think 2.2 to be exact. Since it started actually collecting fees in 2015, which I think that first year it only collected about $9,000, and each year since then, it's collected roughly $400,000, which is far short of what was anticipated when it was adopted into law and the fee was created.
Why do you think that is?
The nearest we can come to a conclusion on for that is that there was a discrepancy between the actual weight that's taken of cargo in containers and what is weighed when it comes off of the ships. So I think when there was a calculation that was put together from it, they had included, at least when I talked with Mr. Hertzliff from the chamber, we kind of both agreed that it looks as though the weight that was provided included the vehicles and the chassis of the truck versus just the container itself. So when it's actual weight from the containers that were taken, right now, like I said, it comes out to about $400,000 a year versus the $2 million that was expected.
Do you think there's a way we can increase that?
What I think would actually bring it to the amount that was expected is to increase the fee itself, which is currently 75 cents per 1,000 pounds. And that would have to be increased in order to hit the 2.2 million, which was, I mean, the chamber was part of that process, the legislature, our division, everyone sat around and talked about it, and the 2.2 was agreed was a necessary amount for the invasive species and biosecurity of our island. So I think if we can actually get to what was the agreed upon amount, that would be helpful, but that would require an increase in the fee.
Okay. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Clint. Madam Speaker?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity. To Chelsea and Mrs. Santos, thank you for being here for your presentation. And as I'm looking over this budget and sharing the same sentiments with the Oversight Chair on Agriculture, I think that agriculture is a very vital and critical agency needed within this government, especially as it relates to trying to make sure that our agriculture industry grows here on Guam. And as I'm looking at the budget and seeing that the proposed 144,000 of the increase is like, I was quite concerned about some of the negative components here in the budget breakdown, especially as it relates to the invasive species of, you know, the request for 2020 was at 819,791, and then the proposed agency allotment was for 2021 was at 717,988, which shows a negative 101,803. But I'm looking at some of the offsets and, you know, almost considering a wash, because I'm looking at your operations, Chelsea, and I guess your coordination and admin, and I see that there's a decrease also there. I think for me personally, I've always felt that between making sure agriculture is fully funded and also with biosecurity, because you guys are the first line of defense as it relates to all the inspections that come in, and seeing that negative, I mean that reduction, it's kind of worrisome. And maybe one of the first questions I want to ask is, has the Department of Agriculture done anything to apply for any grant opportunities as it relates to COVID and helping out everything agriculture? And has the agency applied for any federal grants that can help the agency move forward in any of its mission mandates?
Yes, we absolutely have applied for several different grant opportunities. Specifically with the CARES Act and the COVID funding, we are working with GITA to apply for some of the EDA funding that is available, because that's what's directly available to the department as a whole. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the CARES Act funding for agriculture flowed more directly through USDA and as direct payments to farmers or direct loans to farmers. But for the agency itself, we were looking at economic development opportunities for livestock and aquaculture. But each of our divisions applies for federal funding every single year. ADS, our Agriculture Development Services, applies through USDA marketing service, agriculture marketing services for, right now we have 2 current grants with them, one for specialty crops, which are root crops that we're gonna convert the tissue culture lab, which was, when I came into the department, they were growing orchids, which are great and wonderful, but they can't feed us. So we're converting that into, or returning that into growing root crops and staple crops for homeowners and farmers. And then a second funding is to help farmers with feral ungulates and the pigs, so we're working to build traps for them. And then we're also applying for funding to start creating with the, well, we've talked about it with the University of Guam and with other nonprofits to start creating online workshops for people. Because of the COVID situation, gathering in large groups would be less feasible. So we want to create online training and workshops for them and make that available to them. Our forestry division is 100% federally funded for its operations. So our forest health work, our urban forestry work, our program that signs up residents with property, a conservation stewardship program, that's all federally funded. DAR, our wildlife and fisheries division, is basically 100% federally funded. Our biosecurity division applies for grants continuously throughout the year to fight everything from the little fire ant to the coconut rhinoceros beetle to we're trying to hire an agriculturalist 3 to address the black-banded hornets, and also to work with bees and farmers to help them use that for propagating and cultivating, so that the bees can pollinate the different crops for farmers so that they can grow larger and more abundant. Our conservation officers have taught themselves to apply for grants as well. So I worked with them last year and this year to get for brand new radios. And then this year is for funding to acquire drones to help them patrol the preserves. I don't think I left any. Oh, for animal control, we just, I worked on a $400,000 grant for them to help with our stray dog issues that we talked about with all of the mayors, and that incorporates our registration process and all of that. They're all tied together to try to help eradicate the stray animal problem on Guam, which the community had 6 straight months of media coverage where they voiced their concerns and frustrations. So we responded by applying for a grant to help cover the operations for that. So yes, we do apply for federal grants. It takes a lot of time.
Well, you know, Chelsea, I just want to share with you, Mr. Chair, thank you for giving me the opportunity to have Mrs. Munoz-Brecht share that presentation, because, you know, as we look at what is coming out from the general fund and all that, and the presentation that was received this morning on another agency, making sure that there is that accountability of what funding is out there for the agency, because when I look at this and the measly 144,000 that's being asked, right, I say, okay, modest and humble, but yet I know that the work that you guys do out there is incredible and very critical to the defense to our island, especially as it relates to invasive species. And you know that we've been affected by the fire ants, the rhino beetle, and all this stuff. And that's why I'm saying that if there is any agency out there that needs to be fully funded, it would be this agency. And you at least presenting what you get from the federal side is really important, so that our listening audience understands that you guys have your work cut out for you. And as I support those efforts to you, Ms. Chelsea, and to Ms. Santos, I think it's important that the community knows that what is being provided today, and working with, I guess trying to right-size the administration and work what you already have, that it's commendable. But I think the services that you provide to the community as it relates to all those different programs, those should be recorded also in this presentation, so that we can all see what's going on. I did get a request, Mr. Chair, from one of my colleagues, Senator who shared with me that He couldn't make it here, but wanted to ask, we all realize that our conservation officers are our law enforcement authority when it comes to many environmental laws, including laws which preserve our fish population, including our endangered species. This includes the scuba fishing ban. This legislature recently passed. You know that, right?
Yes.
Okay, are there enough conservation officers to properly enforce the fish, wildlife, and environmental protection laws on Guam? Gotta
Short
be honest.
answer, no.
Okay.
But we're working on trying to get there. We did hire we filled 2 positions this year. Unfortunately, one of them, as soon as it was filled, the individual resigned. But that was for family reasons, so we don't hold that against him at all, but we're working on trying to fill that position, and that would just bring some welcome relief to the officers who are currently patrolling right now. The numbers are a little bit deceiving in that the number of officers who actually are able to patrol right now is limited to 4. So the 2 that are coming on will be able to help them. We're working on filling a position for someone who had resigned last year, or this fiscal year, and another officer who is transitioning into another division. So we'll get to try and fill that, but that still just brings us to 6 or 8 now. And right now they can't even operate on rotating shifts because there's not enough of them to do that. So we do absolutely need more conservation officers, and Senator Talahi has made a great effort to work with our section on helping them to do that, and also to change some of their operating structure so that they can start seeing some of the fruits of their labor, where they make arrests, and right now, because it's criminalized, it has to be adjudicated, which sometimes we end up not seeing any results from that, or if we do, it's the nominal $500 penalty or fine. So we're trying to work to convert that into a citation program so that there's costs associated with each infraction, and we don't have to put an undue burden on the judicial section by trying to litigate it. So we're trying, we take all the steps we can. And like I said, they've even started, they've been teaching themselves to write grants so that we can start seeking funding elsewhere. And although we have all these numerous grants that we've submitted or applied for, there's just really, we're constantly on the lookout, but there's just not enough of us to write grants for each section. As I said, I've been working on them myself. So, you can imagine the role of a director trying to lead an agency with 6 different sections, but then I have to shut down my door for like 2-3 days just to try to roll out a grant proposal. John Borja for ADS, again, Agriculture Development Services, sits there and juggles between taking care of our bona fide farmers, receiving permits, conducting inspections, trying to run the nursery, and then take time out to either complete grant reports or grant proposals. It's extremely challenging, and we just really do need personnel to help us with that process.
Thank you. So in that effort, Mr. Chair, I know that that yes, maybe there should be an amendment to this based on the needs and the wants and the desires, and maybe see what other federal grants are out there that can assist in helping you find the bodies. The Oversight Chair joked about getting a grant session going, a training going for the rest of the government agencies to come together to help write these grants, because we have to look at this. Times are hard for everybody, but we have to get creative and think outside the box. I know that there's another thing, Mr. Chair, that I need to ask, was based on Senator Pito's request, was there is a fishing stock on Guam that has been depleted by the so-called Yamaha fleet. This has affected our fishermen on Guam and threatens our marine ecosystem with overfishing. How has Fish and Wildlife addressed this issue? Do you guys have something in place?
Well, we've tried to approach that a couple of different ways. Number one is just using some of the funding that was provided last fiscal year, because the work between the governor and the legislature thankfully provided more in operational funds for our conservation officers. So we've been working to repair their boats, number one, because they can't even get in the water with anything but jet skis right now. And actually those jet skis were repaired this fiscal year as well. Number two, our Division of DAR with fisheries, we have applied for grants to work with aquaculture and restocking our fisheries. So we have a grant proposal that was approved for about $100,000 to conduct a feasibility study to determine would it be more efficient to have in-water hatchery versus an on-land hatchery. And then we have a second grant proposal that was submitted to develop community-based hatchery. We're thinking primarily in the Achang Preserve to start cultivating rabbitfish to repopulate the reefs. But we want to do more than just that. We want to teach the community how it works and so teach them how to operate it and manage it so that it becomes something that they own in that village and that they can monitor since they're there all the time rather than having a conservation officer there trying to patrol it. We'll have residents patrolling it and keeping people out of their preserve because they know that the fish that are grown there will then repopulate the reef when they're ready to start fishing. We're also working to submit a proposal in November to create basically a mariculture hatchery which would raise edible seaweeds, shellfish, and reef fish in an enclosed or in a water tank so that we're restocking not just the fish, but the biodiversity and habitat of our reefs.
Thank you. You know what, just sharing that presentation makes me feel a little better that you guys are still doing a lot of work and having that, especially with the concerns that have been happening within the community. And then I promise this is the last question. Do we have conservation reservist officers, conservation officer reservist?
Yes, we received a federal grant for that as well. So we're in the process of hiring the 10 reservists. Right now we've submitted, I think, our position description questionnaire to DOA for processing so that they can start reviewing it and then open the announcement so that we'll have 10 reservists for 1 year. It's federally funded. And they receive a stipend of, I believe, $400 a month.
Right.
So what is it today, the reservists? How many do you have today?
Oh, none. The grant provides for 10, but we're trying to hire them all at one time.
Okay, so
The account was just created this year. I mean, we haven't been sitting on it at all by any means. So the proposal was approved at the beginning of the fiscal year, I believe. So then we've established the account and now we're working on the hiring process.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chelsea. Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I want to support.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chelsea,
Yes, sir.
like I'd always say, get her done, okay? So get it done. Don't come up with any other reasons. Senator Kelly, do you have any questions? And after you, it'll be Senator Torres, and then we're going to switch off from the different senators. Senator Kelly.
Sutuus Masi, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of you for being here. The Department of Agriculture, it's such an important agency, as we've been hearing. Your mandate is quite broad. You're serving the community in so many ways, ways that are supposed to be strengthening us, protecting us, and just helping us better manage aspects of our environment in our community. So I'll focus on a few different things here. And I just want to mention that there's so much potential. Some of it was discussed already about strengthening our food security. Our future is uncertain in certain ways. We have super typhoons, we have apparently pandemics and other things that come here from time to time. And so the ways that we can make our economy more sustainable, build up our food security, diversify our economy, interact with other islands perhaps in sharing of food. There are so many things that are, they give us hope for our future and dealing with some of the issues that we're now experiencing or have experienced in the past, and help us become more resilient. So some of what I was looking at was really about kind of the structure, and I have really appreciated hearing about all of the programs that you have that are ongoing, the thoughtfulness, the holistic nature of them, that it isn't just thinking about the fish on one hand, it's about what they need to be able to have a healthy environment to sustain themselves in and so forth. So part of that is also making sure that things are in place so that there's a plan. And I first wanted to ask about your board of commissioners. I believe that I saw that the last time they met was in April 2019. So that may not be the last time they've met. Maybe that was the last time their audio files were uploaded to OPA or something like that. Can you tell us a little bit about your board of commissioners? Is it impaneled? Are they meeting regularly to be able to give you the guidance?
No, not at this time. We don't have a convened board of commissioners.
Is that something that you have any understanding that's been is being worked on? Are they working to get the members in place and then impaneled to provide the department that guidance?
I know that it's something that our leadership has discussed, but we haven't actively been moving towards trying to convene that board. We kind of just have jumped into the agricultural waters, so to speak, and move forward really with what we have right now. We weren't waiting to get a group together to try to help us guide movement or guide actions within the department. We just kind of took off running.
Well, I like the proactivity part because, right, things can't be at a standstill without that. And maybe that's something that will be in the works as well, is getting that guidance so that there are those representatives who can focus some time and effort and help share some of that responsibility and that load. The other thing I wanted to ask about is some of the different plans. So I understand it's walking into a whole lot. There's, like we've talked about, there's a lot of programs that you're doing. There's a lot of outreach that you're doing. And so Department of Agriculture, by everything I've ever seen or heard, you're very, very active and proactive as well. So
Sorry.
are there some of the master plans? Like, is there an agricultural master plan, or are there thoughts of putting together a master plan?
Absolutely. One of the first things and the governor made that one of her priorities was to have a master plan, an agricultural master plan developed. And from the get-go of being within this department, I've seen that this agriculture master plan is going to be inclusive of everything from our forestry division and our biosecurity division, fish and wildlife, because they all intermingle. They create our entire habitat. We've just recently submitted a proposal. Well, Gita drafted the proposal and with our consultation, so we got to work on it collaboratively to design the scope for it, but we submitted a proposal for funding to have an agricultural master plan developed. So pending awarding of that proposal, we should be able to start that process.
That's very good news to hear. I'm not sure that one has existed before, but it makes a lot of sense. It's going to give everybody clear direction. It's going to give you tasks and goals that can be attained, and then we can all see and understand. And like you said, there's so much interactivity and overlap that it can really synergize and perhaps use everybody's talent and skills more efficiently. Is there any understanding, like in that scope of work that was developed by Gita, is there an understanding of how long they think that this master plan will take?
I believe it was realistically close to 1 year. I mean, between the structure and collaboration process with us, the University of Guam, and the Northern and Southern Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and then putting it, drafting the document, putting it out for public input and public comment. I would say roughly 10 months to a year, I think, to put that together and have it be done comprehensively, but done well.
Well, that would be something to look forward to, and I'm sure working along the way that will already start giving you guidance. Like I said, you guys are very active already, but people will start being able to see how pieces can fall into place. So I'm sure that we'll realize some payoff even before that. Within that, or if you could just help me understand if these plans are separate, or if they're meant to be part of that. So, like the invasive species management plan, is that something that is developed already, or will be part of that larger plan?
Well, the Guam Invasive Species Council had created an invasive species management plan, not with the term that I was in, but the years before that. But I know that we're currently working on updating that management plan to be much more comprehensive than it was previously. But that's a separate plan. And then additionally, like our different sections, DAR has its Guam State Action Plan, which was developed in collaboration with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. But it was written by DAR based on our species that are of greatest concern and need locally. But it's kind of like a federally approved master plan. We have our Forestry State Action Plan. So each of the different sections has a plan that they're working off of. But I think all of the different components from each of those would absolutely need to be incorporated into our agriculture master plan.
Sutus Maasi for that. And it helps us with the budget because we can really see that it's going into some structure, and that it will be well spent. I know throughout this term we've worked on legislation that has talked about conservation officers and the need for them. So where are we exactly with how many conservation officers that are in place? I think I heard that you are working towards hiring some, and how do you foresee getting to having even more? I know with your large mandate, it also requires a lot of protection and implementation and enforcement.
Well, our conservation officers have not sat idly by either. They've taken great steps to try and develop their own sources of income, basically, or to help sustain themselves. So in addition to the support provided through our government, they have worked to develop a relationship with NOAA law enforcement section, which allows them to be reimbursed for some of the services that they provide already fulfilling our mandates, but to help support federal mandates as well. So as they go out and do patrols on water, while they're looking for people who are poaching illegally in our waters, they're also able to identify that as time that they're spending enforcing federal mandates for NOAA, like the Marine Mammal Protection Act or the Lacey Act, which identifies people who are shipping endangered species across waters. So that helps them to receive reimbursements for their time spent in the water, and they've used that money to help offset some of their operations costs. And we're also anticipating being able to use that to fund maybe one or two positions, because it's not a substantial amount of money, but it's enough to provide some source of help. And then, like I said, they're working to create a citation program rather than a program that will run through the judiciary directly or be adjudicated, so that it's a quicker source for them for reimbursement of just time, effort, and fees that are collected from people who are breaking Guam's laws. So that's, and then just if we're able to, I guess, identify more grant funding that can help sustain some of the efforts that they're making, then perhaps some of the funds that are used for operations may eventually, hopefully, be able to be shifted to use to hire more personnel. Short of that or just being appropriated more money for personnel, we're just trying to do what we can.
And if you could just clarify so that we have set in our minds and we know that what we're working towards this year and in upcoming years, where are we at with the number of conservation officers and at this point with everything that you have before you, and having that plan will further crystallize and make it clear.
Right now, we have now 8 conservation officers. We're hiring a 9th and then a 10th person with an open announcement, because that was someone who just recently resigned. So that'll eventually be 10 officers with 10 reservists, but the reservists only put in a limited amount of time per month. So I think it's something like 4 hours a month that they will contribute towards supporting the patrols of our conservation officers. And right now, that program is only funded for 1 year. I guess the Coral Reef Protection Program wanted to see if there was something we would even be able to stand up. And then I think the caveat was that we would look to be able to have it locally funded before they would consider supporting it again.
Well, again, it's good to hear of the proactivity. And if I'm remembering right, so correct me if I'm not remembering correctly, I thought I remembered you saying earlier that, not today, but earlier in time, that maybe something more in the lines of having 22 or 30 conservation officers would really be where we'd like to be at. So if we have about 10 now, what is the ideal that we're working towards to do everything that we need to be done for our community?
I always say 30. Our conservation officers said they would just be thrilled to even have 20. 30 would be kind of like sitting comfortable, and they could operate fully functioning. But with just even 20, they would feel some sense of relief on the pressure that's on them right now.
Zeus Masi for providing that. And I was thinking there was one more question, but I'll go ahead and move on, and then from the chair, if I track down that question again, if I can ask that at a later time.
Thank you, Senator Marsh.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. Senator Mary Camacho Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chelsea, what in your opinion is your biggest challenge right now that needs the most attention and absolute complete funding in all the different areas that you are tasked with at Department of Agriculture, to include, you got biosecurity, mandates, economic development, with agriculture and farming, animal health control, enforcement of laws?
To identify one, I think it would be our agriculture development services. That is the heart, I think, of what the department was created for initially, was to support agriculture on our island. And although each of our divisions is absolutely vital to protecting our natural resources, the ADS division is one that was slowly and methodically gutted over the last 2 decades. And without personnel, all of the mandates that we have for that division and the wonderful ideas and plans that we have for growing our agriculture and aquaculture and aquaponic economies, they'll struggle. They'll just completely struggle and kind of limp by until we have the personnel to actively support that division. We have a really great division chief who has tried to hold that section together and do everything we can, but even beyond agriculture, aquaculture, and aquaponics, if we are able to get our fees in place, I mean, they process permits. That's another revenue generating component for the department. But even just thinking about the island holistically with food security and with a new leg of agricultural development or economic development, and then the recreational cannabis industry, we just need the personnel to be able to even make these things meet the bare minimum of what we should be doing for our island.
I appreciate that, because you're correct. There is biosecurity. I mean, there is food security issues, but there's also a real need for another economic development on Guam, another tier. And we know that logically in an island that has year-round sunshine and ample rainfall, and the will of the farmers to invest in this industry, that has to have another focus. So I appreciate that, and I think also we should look further into our partnership with Fish and Wildlife, because many of the laws that we're enforcing are commingled with their objectives as well. So the heavy lifting, I would imagine, ought to come from that angle, the federal angle, to protect the seashores and the waters. But the one comment I wanted to make, as I was listening to you respond to the speaker's question about the Yamaha fleet, part of the problem that we have, knowing that there are vacancies and very few enforcement arms with Department of Agriculture, the problem that we're having is people take full advantage of the fact that they're not going to be stopped. And short of your ideas and your objectives for a long-term, reasonable, educated remedy is good. We do need people to understand and own why they have to protect resources and allow them to flourish, etc. But what we're dealing with right now is lawless people who don't give a damn and will continue to reap the fruits of the reef because there's a profit to be made. And until you can enforce a stop order on that kind of activity, nothing's going to change. So we'll only be propagating fish for them to steal and make money off of. So I really hope that right now, as we ban scuba dive fishing and put some businesses out of business because that was their way to collect the reef fish abundantly to survive, that we cannot turn a blind eye to the Yamaha fleet. And so I believe that angle, I know this is a budget hearing, but we are talking about priorities and where monies are to be spent. So I agree with you in terms of agriculture. You are, after all, the Department of Agriculture. And fundamentally, growing that economic development should be your top line. But I think that if we're talking about resources to include land and sea, we have to wrestle this right now, because it is the most disgusting practice. And the fact that everybody sees it and knows about it, and it still is allowed, it's just beyond me. And I know that you appreciate that, Chelsea, and I respect that about you, that you do get it. But I think we need to help you to put an end to that. Otherwise, there's no point in it. We punish the little guy, but we don't go after the bigger guns. And it's time to do that. But
with that, Senator, we actually, I really appreciate your comments there, and we have actively engaged and talked with our Oversight Chair about that section, and so that is coming, and he'll need your support with that. But we've worked with our Fishing Council, our Federal Fishing Council, as well as our local fishers to create commercial regulations and commercial permitting regulations that would require commercial vendors to be registered, and they can only buy fish from registered commercial fishers, so that it helps to facilitate the control of what kind of fish are being brought in, and are they the appropriate size? Are they bringing in what looks like a really crazy amount to be catching on one boat trip, so that it was done unsustainably? But if you control it at the demand, then the supply will follow accordingly. And another component that was brought up frequently during the scuba public hearing was consideration for restrictions on nighttime fishing. So I know our Oversight Chair wants to have an open discussion with the fishing community, which we absolutely welcome. And our agency has been very open and upfront and transparent with our local fishing community in our conversations that we've had over the past year and a half, so that we're developing a mutually trusting relationship, and we seek their input as much as we offer our input. So I'm looking forward to that conversation when we're able to have that. But those are two things for consideration: is nighttime fishing restrictions and mandatory commercial reporting.
And also, as Manny Duenas very clearly makes it, we have to go back to the unwritten rule of fishermen, which is responsible fishing. And he
Taking
always
only
talks
what you
about
need.
that.
Yep.
When to catch, what to catch, size of catch, all of that. And so, you know, it's just the traditional farmers knew what to do and how to regulate themselves. And unfortunately, we don't. We have others that, in the interest of making money, are overstepping that. So, you know, maybe we need to go back to the lessons of Manny Duenas and the cooperative, the fishermen's cooperative, and have that be the law of the land.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you very much, Chelsea.
Thank you, Senator
Mr. Chair.
Torres.
Thank you, Senator Mary. Senator Luis Munoz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Chelsea. And
Hi, good afternoon.
hi. So I thank my colleague for bringing that up prior to me about that, because I've taken a very big interest in it too, and have been collaborating with a lot of them. Actually, they've been just reaching out to me. So I'm hoping that, you know, you would open the doors a little bit wider for them and just find out how we can take care of everybody as far as fishing is concerned. So thank you for that. My question really is in regards to, because you mentioned pet licensing, about the increase in the fees from 5 to, I think you said 20?
20, yes.
20? So how many pet licenses do we actually currently have now? Do you have a number, an estimate number?
I apologize, I don't have an exact number right now, but I know that for every pet that's imported into Guam, they're required to register. So those are pets just for people moving to the island. But when we started the process in, I want to say it was around January when we started making the announcements, we had several people come in and register their pets. And then unfortunately it kind of ceased with the COVID situation, and we didn't want to push it right now because people are suffering and they're having financial hardships and difficulties. So I didn't want to make that a heavy push for us to keep warning people to register their pets. But right now it's still currently $5, and we're not pushing to have it changed all, you know, overnight or all of a sudden, but eventually that will need to just be updated for the times. But with when we find out about our proposal, and if our project is funded, that will require that the law that Senator Rogell, or the bill that Senator Rogell introduced, would have a public hearing and come up for session, because it requires sections like needing pets to be tagged, needing pets to be microchipped, so that when we do start our Roundup process, we're not picking up family pets. But at some point, yes, we will have to update the fee for that.
So you don't really have a estimate number of how many you have now?
I would say roughly between 1 to 200 right now, but we had only really been pushing it for about a month before
And that's for people
the
who are
COVID
just bringing
situation
their
happened.
animals in, right, from
Yeah.
off island. So what are the requirements for the license?
We have the form on our website, so they just need to download the form. They can fill it out with their pet's names, the owner's address, owner's contact information, a description of the pet, and then submit that to the agency with their $5. Part of the proposal that we submitted included a tag carving machine or tag engraving machine, and then tags, but right now they can also obtain those through their veterinarian clinics.
Are vaccinations required in the licensing, or?
The rabies vaccination is required, yes. But that was already on the books.
Okay.
And then microchipping is an added component. But I think we also included a section where if you're a licensed breeder, you can microchip your animals yourself. Because most of them do that already now anyway. And Gain also offers microchipping at a really nominal fee.
Do you notice when they register, currently now, when they register their pet or they license them and their pet has, you know, a litter, do they come in and register the litter too as well, or?
If they're doing it for sale, as the law exists right now, if you're breeding pets, the first litter is kind of like a buy, you get a pass. But the second litter, if you're selling it for money, you need to be registered with the Department of Revenue and Taxation so that you're claiming that income.
Okay.
But otherwise, what we're trying to encourage people to do is also to spay and neuter their pets. So unless you're really interested in breeding your pet, I mean, spaying and neutering should be almost just natural consideration for pet owners.
Okay.
And then we're requiring that for imported pets as well. There's a fee attached if you're importing your pet and you're choosing not to spay and neuter them, then there's a higher fee for that.
I understand it has to be updated. For some people, like you said, families of from $5 to $20 is quite a lot.
Yes.
And what are the consequences of them not, registering their pet? Could be confiscation of their pet, and some people just don't have the means, to come up with the money. But I'm willing to work with the chair and yourself too on how we can address that and take care of the our fur family.
Well, and as the law exists right now, there actually technically would be a cap, because as the law is right now, each family is only allowed to have no more than 4 pets, 4 dogs. So there would be a cap on it. And then we were minimizing that fee if they also considered spaying and neuter their pets. So there's options for reductions.
I think there are some states that where the vaccinations actually come from the fee of licensing. I don't know if you're considering that, or is that something that you would offer to some of the families to assist them in their...
Maybe it's a program we could enter into with some of the local veterinarians, because we don't provide vaccinations at the department right now, but I think that's something we could certainly consider, or even a hardship component, so that if you can demonstrate that you're economically challenged, then maybe we could, reduce your fee or have it last for a longer period of time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Munoz. Senator Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Chelsea.
Half a day, Senator.
Half a day. So if you could just clarify, earlier you said you have 9 conservation officers, is that correct?
We have 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 right now. We just picked up 2, but 1 left the position. So right now, yes, there is 9, and we're trying to fill that position that just was vacated. We went through the rigorous process of hiring 2 conservation recruits, as was also encouraged through the SCUBA bill. But within the week of one of the recruits starting, he had to resign. So we do actively have 9. And then we're trying to fill that second position. And then 1 conservation officer resigned last year, or this fiscal year, so we're trying to fill his position as well. So hopefully by the end of the hiring process, we will have 12.
Okay. So currently on staff you have...
Well, but it's a little bit deceptive, because we do have 9, but only 4 are actively patrolling right now. 1 is part of the RAC positions that is detailed during a public emergency to Homeland Security for the purposes of communications with the agency. We have 1 officer who is in the process of transitioning to the Biosecurity Division, 1 officer who is on extended sick leave, and 1 officer who is on extended sick leave as well and in the process of retiring. So although it says we have 9 on the books, we only have 6 right now who are able to patrol. Well, 5 not including the RAC. So 5 who are able to go out on patrols, and 1 of them is new, so they're in the process of being trained.
Okay, so maybe this is a little bit too premature to find out, but what is the impact of hiring these additional conservation officers? Have they made an impact?
Well, it absolutely improves morale, and it reduces the sense of hopelessness that some of the officers feel with trying to accomplish their mandates, and the taxing effect it has on their overall health, because they're trying to do as much as they can with the limited, personnel and time that they have. And then when they get constant calls or people sending them information about either illegal fishing that's happening or wildfires and poaching, they want to do more, but they also understand that they have their limitations. So as soon as we can get, I mean, as soon as we pick up personnel, there, you see an automatic jump and improvement in mood and an eagerness to go out and patrol.
Okay.
And I think it would just bring more of a sense of that same hope to the community when they learn that we pick up more conservation officers. We see the chatter in some of the fishing chats increase, and they start feeling more hopeful about sending in information. As an example, over last weekend, we had text messages coming in about people illegally harvesting sea cucumbers in the Aspen Preserve, in the Aspen Peter Preserve. And one of the conservation officers, even though it was their day off, said, you know, I'm getting ready and I'll report. And he was down there. And the person who was sending in the messages was just really appreciative and said, thank you for the really quick response. So that's the kind of engagement we can see when we have more officers who are able and ready to respond to public, you know, public cries for help, basically, because it was on their regular day off, but they were still ready to report. And they actually only have one day off a week right now.
Okay. So we're looking forward to seeing any progress in that area.
Yeah.
So in regards to, so I noticed in last year's budget and this year's budget as well, part of it is coming from the tourist attraction fund. As you know, the revenues are down. And how do you foresee in addressing the downturn? As you said earlier in the beginning of your statement, that these are leaner times. So where do you anticipate the cuts to be?
That'll be in our animal control section right now. There's one position that's funded through the TAF in the biosecurity division, but that one is vacant right now. It's vacant, ready for recruitment. So we anticipate that that'll just be cut. But right now there are three animal control officers, the clerk for animal control section, basically that entire section, other than the territorial veterinarian and the animal control supervisor that are funded through general fund. The rest are funded through TAF, so I don't have an answer for what we will do with that. And then a secretary 2 position also. So I think we're having a meeting this weekend or this week to discuss how some of the agencies will be responding to that, but I can't even begin to anticipate what's going to happen there with us. Like I said, we're taking steps to try and generate revenue for that section with registration fees and just grant opportunities, but other than that, I don't know what we're going to do with that.
And, in last year's budget, basically the Invasive Species Fund was provided to be used for operational expenses. How much of that has been used and what was it utilized for?
Right now we've been using that fund to hire positions. And maybe, Tony, can you speak on some of the other operations costs we put out of the Invasive Species Fund?
Well, the department's operation is actually from the Tourist Attraction Fund.
Can you
We don't
speak in the microphone?
You just need to move closer.
All the department's operation is only in the Tourist Attraction Fund, which covers the utilities, the copier machine, and minimal amount for supplies.
But what about with the Invasive Species Fund?
Invasive,
Is there anything that it covers from operations?
very minimal too. Yeah, actually that's where it is. The Invasive Species Tourist Attraction Fund is where the operation is for the department. The only operation for the Animal Tourist Attraction Fund is only for the copier machine and their stipend.
Okay.
But, so she's mentioning the Tourism Attraction Fund, but for the Invasive Species Fund, we announced our commodity inspector position. We've hired a clerk for that section. We have an open announcement for the program coordinator, an agriculturalist 3, a biological aide. So we're trying to fill positions with that primarily right now, which is what the Guam Invasive Species Council has asked for, was more positions to be filled.
Okay. Yeah, if you can provide the amount to the committee, that would be helpful. So if you can provide the total amount, do you have the total amount or estimate? for that?
Let's see. Oh, this is the,
Which one is
okay. For the the invasive species fund?
this? The animal control, that's only, yeah.
I have it here, but which one is the current year?
That's the invasive species one, animal control and the tourists.
No, but not the TAF, the Guam invasive species fund.
Oh,
This is the TAF one. So it's for this one,
yeah.
which is the current year expenses?
Where's the expenses?
So Chelsea, if you don't have that, you can just provide
No,
that
I
at a
think we
later
do,
time.
actually.
Yeah, but this is 20. All right. Oh, you have that on the right.
Yeah, sorry. I believe right now, to include positions that we're trying to fill, it comes to roughly around 400,000. And that's to include the salaries of the positions that are already filled. So it's actually a very limited account.
Yeah. This is their operation. Yeah. That's their operation.
Where's the current? That's
Here,
this
here.
one?
No, this is their operation for invasive species.
But what about from the fund specifically? Just the invasive species fund?
This is, yeah. Okay.
I think right now she has at the total expenses around 900,000. So part of that is general fund, tourism attraction, tourism attraction fund and excuse me, invasive species.
Here, that's
Okay.
invasive species.
So what is the amount total for that?
It's all combined in the digest.
Oh, but that's
Yeah.
operations.
This operation, what are you looking for?
Total including personnel that's expended out of that?
Right here. There. For 2020, you'll be here.
Okay, but it doesn't say which one is just the GISP. Oh, here. Okay. So, oh, that's the fund though.
That's a total.
But what's expended?
2020. Oh, I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator. We don't have the exact amount that's expended, but we have a combined amount, but that's combined with other funds that go into that section. But I know just in terms of personnel specifically, in our proposed staffing pattern, we have that at around 695,000. And that's with the positions that, I'm sorry, that's with the positions that are already currently filled, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are vacant, recruitment in progress.
So just to confirm, of the invasive species fund, 600 and some thousand have been used for personnel costs?
Yes.
Okay. And then what portion of that was to addressing invasive species or animal control?
Well, these are all the positions for that section.
Okay.
So animal control doesn't pull funds out of the invasive species fund.
Okay.
They're funded through the tourism attraction fund and
Okay.
general fund.
Okay, so 100% is for the invasive species personnel? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Well, they actually have some that are set aside for categories like equipment and such, but that division hasn't specifically indicated that they needed any of those supplies or equipment yet. And they've really just wanted to fill positions.
Yeah. Can you just provide a breakdown, maybe at a later time,
That's animal control.
if you don't have the numbers
That's
right
their
now?
From
operation.
GISC?
Yeah. No, not from GIS, from the
That's what
tourist
she wants.
attraction
No,
fund.
she wants from GISC if there's anything funded for animal control
No.
out of GISC.
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, you wanted a breakdown of?
Yeah, of the,
Ms. Chelsea, is that in your budget digest?
Well, the budget digest that I'm sorry, I was looking at the staffing pattern, and Tony's
Okay,
looking at the
well,
budget
Chelsea,
digest.
very simple. Is it in your budget digest?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Barris, it's in our budget. Maybe she can provide that to you. I hate to see her try to find it in the system when she should have had that all
Yeah, this is the.
tabulated for you and for all of us.
sure.
because there's probably other things that are related that we need to ask questions about.
Yeah, so if you could just provide a summary of the breakdown of what was used from the invasive species fund for personnel and
Okay,
other costs.
sure.
I appreciate that. So no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Senator
Chelsea.
Tello, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much.
Hi,
Happy day,
Senator.
Chels.
Happy day.
And happy day to you, Ms. Santos, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you also, the two of you, for being here today and providing your budget to us and advocating, especially for that one particular department. And you mentioned earlier, you talked about fees and permits, and especially when you're using your manpower to go out to do certain kind of inspections. Can you, Chelsea, and sometimes you don't get any of that funding.
We never get any of that
Okay,
funding.
so that's a big issue.
Absolutely.
And that's something that should be done if we have to do it legislatively, or do you guys need to go back and revisit your fees and permit scheduling or any kind of legislation? So Chelsea, for the sake of time, because we have another budget hearing, please write down those areas in which you use your manpower at the Department of Agriculture to do these inspections and provide any kind of service where you don't receive any of that funding. So let's take care of that and find you some money that way, because you're definitely utilizing your time there. I'd like to also encourage you to use more technology in what you're doing at agriculture. You mentioned drones earlier. That's great. That's great to hear. I'm hoping that you put some money set aside for technology. You know, it would help your agency quite a bit. Do you have a designated procurement officer at your, who does your procurement?
Well, we have an administrative officer at DAR who assists with procurement. Unfortunately, the administrative aide that was assisting her has retired, so we're trying to fill her position. And we had 2 people who are trained in on-base, so they would help process our requisitions if they were under, I think it was $10,000. Yes. But right now we're down to 1, and she will be leaving on maternity leave soon.
Oh, wow.
So we're trying to cross-train another individual to assist with that.
Okay.
But as I sent a memo to GSA requesting that we allow our biologists, specifically at DAR, to be trained or to be given AS400 access, because right now it's limited to those who deal with accounting and procurement. But at DAR itself, they have over 47 different grants. And even if we had an administrative aide and the administrative officer, for them to try to enter requisitions to cover 47 grants, at one point when we had the administrative assistant, she sent an email to all the biologists and said she's only inputting requisitions on Wednesday of each week. So can you imagine the pile that develops and the standstill that projects come to?
Right.
So we took the initiative to ask GSA to give authorization to all of our biologists so that they can enter their own requisitions for each of their own projects. But it would still come to a funnel because we have one person who's trained in on-base to process the requisitions and then send them up to GSA for approval.
Yeah. Well, we definitely need more of those to have the opportunity to be certified or at least, trained. Especially for procurement purposes. I know that there is a requirement actually for a certain amount of people in your agency, so it's very important. The other one is your website, up to date. I like your website, especially the Laddie. I always try and look at websites of agencies to make sure it's up to date and that good information and user friendly too.
We're trying.
Yeah,
Even that was something. Honestly, that was something I was working on too, was creating fillable PDFs from all of our documents and then uploading them to the website to make them useful. But yeah, that's on one of my lists of things to do, and when something else comes up, then that kind of comes to a stop. But we've updated it with stuff like our animal control forms, our farmer documents, and like our pig hunting derby registration forms, just stuff like that so that we can redirect people to that.
Good. User friendly, remember?
Trying.
Okay, with all the agencies that you have, Chelsea, everything down to animal health and control, forestry, agriculture development, aquatic wildlife, invasive species, biosecurity, conservation, law enforcement. You have a lot on your shoulders, and everything we can do to help you to ensure what you need to enforce regulation, as well as to provide the community with a wealth of knowledge, is so important. And lastly, my question on COVID funding. I don't know, maybe it was said earlier, but the crop compensation, was any money set aside at all from COVID money to farmers who were in distress during this COVID crisis at all?
Not that I'm specifically aware of, but we did try to guide farmers to the PPP and the PUA, and we also tried to prepare them for when USDA was going to start accepting submissions for direct payments. And when I was meeting with or talking with representatives from USDA, at the time they weren't sure if they would be funneling that money through the office of the governor or through the legislature, even at one point they mentioned. But then in the end, they ended up funding it through USDA Farm Services Agency, which is the office in Teaden, the federal office. So they were providing direct assistance to farmers who we kept advising farmers, keep track of your records,
Right.
keep track of any losses or anywhere that this pandemic has negatively impacted you, because that's what USDA was going to be looking for.
How about any of the farmers qualify for the ones over at the funding grant over at GIDA?
We've been talking about that with them, but
Yes,
I don't
please.
have that specific answer. I know John Borja has been talking about that with them and redirecting any of them to that if they were interested.
It's a great opportunity. Go to GIDA, the website, ask your farmers to visit GIDA website under COVID, and you'll find an area there for the grants that are submitted by the COVID funding that's given to the governor, which she set aside some money over at GIDA. So this is a great opportunity for your farmers. Please notify them and let them know this is another avenue for them to recover some of
Absolutely.
their loss during this COVID. And again, thank you, Ms. Santos, for your work. And Chelsea, great job. I know you're a hands-on person and love to just go out into get your hands dirty instead of doing all the administrative stuff. But unfortunately, that's what the job comes with.
I know,
But
whoever
I know
thought
you'd rather be out there in the fields,
working at agriculture meant I had to spend a lot of time in the office.
I know, right? It's a little bit different. Well, take care, and thank you so much again, and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tello. And that concludes all the questions from my colleagues. The committee will conclude the budget hearing with the Department of Agriculture. Committee will continue to receive testimonies. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Agustin at gmail.com. Julius Mossi for your attendance.
Senator, I'm sorry to trouble you. If I could just make one small, just like a bug in your ear. If there's at any point an opportunity, we work directly with GAIN, with our animal control officers.
All right.
And in the proposal that we submitted for the stray animal roundup, we included funding to help GAIN build more kennels. So, because right now we have a lot of situations where either mayors or animal control officers seize dogs, but when they take them up to GAIN, all their kennels are full. Now, the reason that the kennels are always full is that like about 50% of their kennels need repair of some form. So I think GAIN had mentioned when we were talking about it with them that they could use a little bit extra funding to help repair some of the existing kennels right now. It would increase their capacity by 50%. Some of the kennels just have rusted cages, rusted doors, stuff like that. So they could use roughly about $45,000 to help repair some of the broken down kennels right now. It's just
As you're making that statement, is that part of your budget to assist them?
No.
Okay, well then just submit us the official letter so we'll know.
Okay.
All right? And then
Thank
we
you.
can move from there, because I know most of my colleagues will support that. Jesus Masi for your attendance and participating in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. The budget hearing on Bill 282-35 relative to the Department of Agriculture is now adjourned. It is now 3:10. Thank you all for being here. Have a nice day, and then we will start with Chamorro Affairs in about 5 minutes. Thank you.